Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Hershey's chocolate. I'm so excited to unwrap this story with you.
Get ready for some surprises. It's more than just a simple chocolate bar, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to go way beyond those iconic squares. Did you know Hershey actually started out making caramels?
It's true. It all began with a caramel king who had a vision for making chocolate affordable for everyone.
Our main source for this deep dive is The Journey of Hershey's Milk Chocolate, a fascinating historical account. It's got all sorts of great details, including a timeline that really brings the story to life.
And what's really cool is how we can see those early caramel days connect to his later chocolate empire.
It's a journey full of twists and turns. Speaking of which, let's start at the very beginning. Milton Hershey, born back in 1857, didn't have instant success.
Nope, not at all. In fact, his first attempt at the candy biz, it totally flopped.
Can you imagine the future chocolate giant failing right out of the gate?
But he didn't give up. Hershey was determined. He went on to found a caramel company, and this is where things get interesting.
Yeah, what was so special about his caramels? Were they like top secret recipes or something?
Well, kind of. His secret ingredient was fresh milk. It sounds simple now, but back then, most candy makers used condensed milk or even substitutes.
So he was already focused on quality ingredients, even way back then.
Absolutely. He knew that fresh milk would give his caramels a smoother, creamier texture and that richer flavor. It set them apart from all the competition.
And that focus on quality, that's something that carries through to his later chocolate success. But how did he even get into chocolate? It seems like such a jump from caramels.
The big moment came in 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair. Hershey saw all this chocolate-making machinery on display, and he was hooked.
So the fair was like his chocolate inspiration.
You could say that. Now remember, back then, chocolate was a luxury, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, it was seen as this fancy European thing, not something everyday folks could afford.
Exactly. But Hershey, he saw a different future. He wanted to make milk chocolate affordable and available to everyone, not just the wealthy.
He was a real visionary. So how did he actually go about creating this dream chocolate of his? What were the challenges he had to overcome?
It wasn't easy. Making a milk chocolate that was smooth, creamy, could sit on the shelf without going bad. That was a tough nut to crack.
I can imagine. It's not just melting some chocolate and stirring in milk, right? There's got to
Yeah,
be more to it.
way more. Hershey had to experiment like crazy, tweaking the recipe, figuring out the process.
Yeah.
It was years of work.
So he's in the kitchen like a mad scientist with chocolate.
Pretty much. He was determined to get it right. And he had to do all this while making sure it stayed affordable, which adds another layer of complexity.
I bet there were lots of failed batches along the way.
Oh, I'm sure. But one of the key things he developed was this specific technique for conching the chocolate.
Conching. I've never heard of that.
It's basically mixing and aerating the chocolate for a long time. It makes it super smooth and velvety.
Uh-huh. So it's the secret to that melt-in-your-mouth texture Hershey's is famous for.
Exactly. And you got to remember, this was the late 1890s. Food science was just getting started, so he was really a pioneer.
He was way ahead of his time, both with his vision and his chocolate-making skills. But do you think his caramel background helped him with chocolate at all?
Definitely. His insistence on fresh milk back in his caramel days, that was huge. He understood the importance of high-quality ingredients and how much they affect the final product.
It's like that caramel success laid the groundwork for his chocolate empire.
You could say that. The caramel business gave him the money, the experience, and that stubborn belief in quality ingredients. It all came together to make him a chocolate revolutionary.
And finally, in 1900, after all that experimentation, the first Hershey's Milk Chocolate Bar was born.
Yeah.
Talk about a sweet victory.
It was a culmination of years of hard work and a testament to his incredible vision.
So did everyone instantly go crazy for this new chocolate bar? Were there lines around the block?
Well, it wasn't an overnight sensation, but as people tried it and saw how affordable it was, its popularity just kept growing.
He was really shaking things up, offering good chocolate at a price people could actually afford. What did he do next? Did he just sit back and watch the money roll in?
Oh, no. Hershey wasn't one to rest on his laurels. He knew he had to ramp up production to meet the demand. But this is where things get really interesting. His vision went beyond just making chocolate.
Ooh, I like that. Tell me more. What was he thinking?
In 1903, he built a massive factory in Dairy Church, Pennsylvania. It was such a big deal, the town ended up being renamed Hershey, Pennsylvania. But here's the kicker. He didn't just build a factory, he built a whole community around it.
What do you mean? Like he built houses for his workers?
Exactly. He built houses, schools for their kids, parks for families. He wanted his workers to thrive, to have a good life.
That's amazing. He wasn't just a businessman, he was building a legacy.
He understood that a successful business depends on happy, healthy workers. It was a revolutionary concept back then, and it's still something companies strive for today.
He was thinking about the big picture, not just profits. So he's got the chocolate, the factory, the community.
Yeah.
What's next in this chocolate empire story?
Hershey was a smart guy. He knew he had to keep innovating. And in 1907, he launched another product that became almost as iconic as that milk chocolate bar.
I think I know where you're going with this. Hershey's Kisses.
Bingo! Those little drops of chocolate, originally wrapped by hand, took the country by storm.
I bet those early kisses were a labor of love.
They were. It shows you how much Hershey cared about every little detail. Quality was everything.
From failed candy maker to a chocolate innovator who built a whole town, Hershey's story is full of surprises. And I have a feeling we're just getting started.
There's so much more to discover.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our Hershey's Deep Dive.
Last time, we left off with Milton Hershey's vision, making milk chocolate something everyone could enjoy, and that amazing factory town he built.
Yeah, not your average factory, that's for sure. But no success story is perfect, right?
True. What were some of the big challenges Hershey's faced? I mean, they were growing so fast.
Well, picture this. World War II breaks out. Not exactly the best time to be in the chocolate business, you'd think.
Definitely not. So what happened? Did they have to shut down production?
Actually, the opposite. Hershey's jumped in to support the war effort big time. They started making these special chocolate bars just for the U.S. military.
Hold on, special chocolate bars. What was so different about them?
These weren't your regular candy bars. They were called D-ration bars, designed to give soldiers a boost of energy and survive crazy temperatures.
Wow, so like in the Pacific heat or the freezing European winters, these bars had to hold up.
Exactly. Durable, nutritious, and hopefully still tasty.
Makes sense. But wasn't chocolate kind of a luxury during wartime? Weren't things rationed back home?
You're right, sugar was rationed for civilians, but the military knew keeping morale up was important. A bit of chocolate could really make a difference for the troops.
So it was more than just a sweet treat. It was strategic.
Absolutely. And they came up with another one, the tropical chocolate bar. That one was made to handle intense heat and humidity, wouldn't melt into a mess.
Clever.
Yeah.
Did all this wartime production change anything for Hershey's long term?
It did, in a surprising way. Those ration bars, they introduced Hershey's to a global audience. Soldiers from all over tasted it for the first time.
So suddenly they're not just an American brand anymore.
Exactly. The war kind of pushed them onto the world stage, broadened their reach.
That's an unexpected outcome. But back in the U.S., I bet the competition was getting fierce too. Weren't other chocolate companies popping up?
Oh yeah, big time. The rivalry between Hershey's and Mars, legendary.
Yeah.
Like Coke versus Pepsi, but in chocolate form.
So how did Hershey's hold their ground against these new rivals?
They stuck to what worked. Affordable, consistent quality, and never stopping with new ideas. Milton Hershey's vision, making chocolate for everyone, that never changed.
Smart move. Focus on what makes you unique. But keeping prices low and equality high, that couldn't have been easy, especially with ingredients getting more expensive.
You're telling me, cocoa prices, for example, they fluctuate all the time. But Hershey's found ways to be efficient, keep costs down without sacrificing quality.
I wonder, do they ever face criticism for that? Like people thinking cheaper meant lower quality?
There were definitely some folks who said Hershey's wasn't as fancy, as complex as some European brands.
Yeah, I can see that. People associate a higher price with higher quality sometimes.
But Hershey's, they stuck to their guns. They believed good chocolate shouldn't be a luxury. And for millions of Americans, that classic Hershey's taste, it became tied to comfort, childhood memories, good times.
It's true, that simple chocolate bar has a special place in so many hearts.
Exactly. They tapped into that emotional connection people have with food. It's more than just taste, it's a feeling. That's powerful marketing.
It is. But times change, right? How did Hershey's handle the shift towards people wanting healthier foods? That seems like a tough one for a chocolate company.
It was. They couldn't ignore it. As people's tastes evolved, Hershey's had to adapt or get left behind.
So they had to branch out, beyond just their classic chocolate bars.
They did. Started introducing sugar-free options, lower-fat versions, even got into things like protein bars and other healthier snacks.
Wow, that's a pretty big leap from their image. Did those new products do well? Did their loyal fans buy them?
It was a risk, that's for sure.
Hmm.
But they realized they had to appeal to a wider range of people, different dietary needs.
So they're walking a tightrope, keeping their old fans happy, but attracting new ones too.
Exactly. And it wasn't always smooth sailing. Some people felt they were abandoning their roots. Others questioned how healthy those new products really were.
Sounds like trying to please everyone is impossible.
It pretty much is. And to make things even more interesting, it wasn't just the big companies like Mars they had to compete with anymore. Suddenly, there were all these smaller artisanal chocolate makers popping up everywhere.
Oh yeah, those fancy high-end chocolates. So Hershey's was getting squeezed from both sides. Big companies on one end, these smaller guys on the other.
You got it. They had to get creative. Started experimenting with premium ingredients, single-origin cocoa beans, more complex flavors.
It's all like dipping their toes into that artisanal world, but still holding on to their mass appeal.
That's it. They saw that people wanted higher quality, but they couldn't forget about all those folks who loved that classic Hershey's taste.
It's amazing how they've stayed on top through all these changes in the chocolate world.
It shows how adaptable they are. They're willing to change with the times, taking risks, trying new things, but always remembering those core values: quality, affordability, community.
Speaking of community, didn't Milton Hershey do a lot of philanthropy?
Mm-hmm.
I vaguely recall something about a school he started.
You're right. The Milton Hershey School, a boarding school for kids who needed a helping hand, founded back in 1909. He put a huge chunk of his fortune into making sure those kids got a good education, a chance at a better life.
That's incredible. His vision went way beyond chocolate. He wanted to make a real difference.
He did, and that legacy continues today through the Hershey Trust, which runs the school and does all sorts of other good work.
So even though Milton Hershey himself is long gone, his values are still a part of the company.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder that a business can do good in the world.
It makes you wonder, after all these ups and downs, how has Hershey's shaped how we see chocolate today? Not just in America, but globally.
That's the question, isn't it? It's about more than just the taste. And that's what we'll explore next time, the cultural impact of Hershey's. How their focus on making chocolate affordable changed our relationship with this treat we all love.
I can't wait to dig into that. Stay tuned as we unwrap the next layer of the Hershey's story. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Hershey's deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, their journey from caramels to becoming a chocolate powerhouse, facing world wars, rivals, and even those changing tastes along the way.
It's been quite a ride, but now we get to the heart of it. How did Hershey's shape how we think about chocolate today? It's more than just the taste.
Right, we talked about that classic Hershey's bar and the nostalgia it evokes for so many. But on a bigger scale, how did their focus on affordability change how Americans view chocolate compared to, let's say, Europe?
That's the million-dollar question. Think back to when Hershey's first hit the scene. European chocolate, that was fancy, expensive stuff. But Hershey's comes along and says, hey, chocolate's for everyone, every day.
They democratized chocolate.
You got it. And that had a huge impact. Suddenly, chocolate's in lunchboxes, vending machines, everywhere. It became part of everyday life.
They made it okay to indulge a little without needing a special occasion or a big budget.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But is that always a good thing? There's another side to this coin.
Oh, what do you mean?
Some folks argue that Hershey's, by focusing so much on affordability, maybe that kind of shaped a less sophisticated palate among Americans, meaning we got used to a certain taste, perhaps a bit less nuanced than some of those high-end chocolates.
I see. It's like you get used to fast food burgers, then you try a gourmet burger, and it's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy. Not saying Hershey's is bad, but did their dominance lead to a less refined chocolate culture in the U.S.? It's an interesting debate.
It makes you think, if Hershey's hadn't existed, would Americans have developed a different taste for chocolate?
Now, that's a fascinating question. But even with that debate, you can't deny the massive cultural impact Hershey's has had. Think about all the ways their chocolate is tied to American life.
Oh, wow, so many. Halloween, those little kisses at weddings, s'mores around a campfire. It's everywhere.
Exactly. Hershey's isn't just a company. It's woven into our traditions, celebrations, everyday moments of joy. They tapped into that universal human need for a little sweetness in our lives.
Absolutely. Okay, but let's fast forward to today. The world's changed a lot since Milton Hershey's time. How's their legacy holding up? Now with climate change, ethical sourcing concerns, people wanting healthier snacks, it's a lot to juggle.
You're right. That commitment to affordability, it's admirable, but it comes with responsibility. Can they do ethical cocoa sourcing, sustainable practices, and keep prices accessible? That's the challenge.
Sounds like they're walking a tightrope, trying to meet consumer expectations and tackle global issues way bigger than any chocolate bar.
No doubt. And we can't forget the competition. Those artisanal brands are gaining ground, offering something Hershey's hasn't traditionally focused on, unique high-end flavors.
So they're kind of caught in the middle. How do they stay relevant to newer generations? People who are more eco-conscious, health-conscious, and maybe have more adventurous taste buds.
They have to innovate, but carefully. Their forays into healthier options, they've had mixed results. And going too far into premium chocolate, that risks alienating their core audience, the ones who love that classic Hershey's taste.
It's like they need to reinvent themselves without losing what made them an icon in the first place. Tough task.
Absolutely. What would Milton Hershey think if he could see his company at this crossroads? I think he'd push them to keep innovating, but always remembering those core values.
Yeah, remember that whole town he built? He wasn't just about profit, but about taking care of the community. Maybe that's the key to their future, showing that ethical sourcing and good business practices can go hand in hand.
That could be their winning ticket. If they can prove they're not just about cheap chocolate, but about a sustainable, ethical future for the whole industry, that's a powerful story.
And maybe that story, that commitment, becomes as much a part of their identity as that iconic milk chocolate bar.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. It's made me see chocolate differently. Not just a sweet treat, but something connected to history, culture, and now the very future we're creating.
I'm right there with you.
Hmm?
It makes you wonder, maybe someday people will look back and say, Hershey's didn't just shape how America tastes chocolate, but helped make the whole industry a force for good. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a sweet journey.